Do it.
All right. Okay, I think we're good. Where are my notes? Here are my notes. Okay, good. Whew. What a rush. Let me just kind of get settled in here.
And actually, while you're settling in, I'm going to jump in.
Okay.
All
We
of
have
you.
to announce that it's Monday thing.
Yes. Well, you do that and then I'll jump in.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone to Monday equals MC squared. Today is April 12th. Did I say April? That's just crazy. Okay, April it is. Hopefully, wherever you are living, you're experiencing the seasonal changes, but we are not. We're going to have snowstorm again this week. So, not quite spring here in Colorado, but we're there, almost there. Okay, so you can jump in now, Chris.
Yeah, I needed you to do that because I couldn't have told you if I would have remembered what day it is. So thanks for doing that. All right. So, with that in mind, I thought it'd be nice for us to start out with just a little bit of a settling in moment and practice this very simple practice called RAIN, which some of you may know about. It's just an acronym. So I'll go through this. And what I want you to do is just wherever you are, find a comfortable seat. You could be reclining or doing something else, but just somewhere where you can stay alert and aware. And the first thing I want you to do is just settle in to your breathing. So come to awareness of how you're breathing. And if you're not breathing through your nose, go ahead and start doing that. Just a slow, light inhale that you extend out for 5, maybe 6 seconds on the inhale. And then on the exhale, do the same thing, just a light, easy, quiet, extended exhale. And let's just do that maybe 2 more times. Slow inhale, followed by a slow, gentle, lengthened exhale. And at your own pace, one more time. As you're getting settled into your body, I want you to pay attention to any little things that might be catching you up. Could be something physical, it could be a little pinch or pain, tension somewhere. Just notice it. And that's probably the easiest thing to do is just find something in your body that's telling you it needs a little bit of tenderness right now. So just give it your full attention as you continue to breathe very gently, quietly, lengthened inhale, slow exhale. And the first letter of RAIN is just to recognize that whatever it is, whatever you came into contact with when I prompted you, just notice it. And following your breath, that same pattern we've been practicing, let's move to the A of RAIN, which is to allow whatever this feeling is, a thought, a sensation, a little tug of anxiety, allowing it to be here, unchanged. Nothing needs to happen, nothing needs to be done to it. Saying, in effect, you belong as much as anything else. And continuing gently to breathe, bringing more attention more of your awareness to this point that you're focusing on, this little thing that needs your attention and your tenderness. And the eye of rain is to investigate it with kindness. Not a spotlight, not an interrogation, not asking it what business it has to exist, but very kindly look into it, feel it. Maybe ask it what it needs. And continue as you do to practice that slow, gentle, extended breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. And last, the N of rain is to nurture what you have discovered in you. The thought, the tension, the pain, the anxiety, whatever it might be. See if you can give it a little something that it needs right now. Not trying to fix it, not trying to make it go anywhere. Is there something you can help it to feel nourished and nurtured so it doesn't need to persist any longer than necessary? And again, as before, continue your slow nasal breathing, lengthened through the inhale, quietly, full breath, and lengthen through the exhale, slowly, feeling your diaphragm move upwards as you exhale. And now notice if anything has changed in this process with what you first became aware of, whatever that little thing was that you found in yourself. Just see if it's changed. Maybe it's a little looser. Maybe it feels a little bit more relaxed or a little more attentive, whatever it might be. I hope you found a way to be kind, to nurture it, and to let it be. And now, with that new awareness intact, let's bring that back into the group slowly at your own pace. You can continue with that breathing pattern if it's comfortable for you. And just come back into awareness of the room. If your eyes were closed, go ahead and open them. All right, welcome back.
Thank you, Chris. We needed that, didn't we?
Yes.
It's been a marathon a bit, so it's nice to just come back to your own home, which is your body. Well, shall we get started with today's topic?
Yeah, let's jump in.
And maybe we'll take a little break in the middle I wanted to share my podcast interview that I had recently done. And I want to share my link for that so you guys can listen to it. So, but let's start with today's topic is a big one too. And we'll try to continue with this topic too. But what's common doesn't mean it's normal. Things been so normalized in the world, and we see this in health world, physiological side, our belief system, even in political arenas. So we wanted to kind of bring up, maybe just start with what we see often in our clinical settings. Is that a good place to start?
Yeah. Do you mind if I maybe just give a little bit more on why this comes up and why it's such an important topic? And one of the things, some of you may know this quote, it's attributed to Voltaire, who was an 18th century French philosopher. One of my favorite quotes. And he says, common sense is not so common. So just think about that for a moment. Common sense is not so common. In other words, what we take to be a shared belief system or the assumptions that we make and hold to be true, if we really start to look into them, they don't hold up to scrutiny a lot of times so well. And the reason why this is so important for us to pay attention to is because we lose sight of the fact that we're doing this all the time. And so Masami started out by talking about this idea of normalizing things. Just think about the language of the pandemic. We've all been talking about when do we get to return to normal or the new normal, right? So we're normalizing what's going on right now as it's happening. And this is what we do as humans. We're constantly adapting. So what we have to be able to differentiate is what is commonplace. In other words, what are the agreements that we're making with each other about what's true or common? What are the things that we hold as true between us? And what is normal as far as what is the system, whether it's our body system or our social system or our medical system, what is normal in the sense of what's required to sustain it and to maintain balance? And that's a very important question to look at when we're talking about our health. So just a couple of quick examples in case this isn't clear yet is...
Chris,
yeah.
Hold on a sec. On the volume, okay, Cynthia says not much better. Okay, good. The volumes were different, I guess. And before you get started on that, can I just share this one quick quote?
Sure.
And many of you know this. It's a yogic idea, or we use this quote a lot, but it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Yeah, Krishnamurti.
Krishnamurti.
Thank you. That's it.
Yeah.
So I think that well adjusted means we have normalized having sickness, illnesses, getting older means X, Y, and Z. We've normalized so much of the comments that we say to ourselves too. So this is where we want to go today. Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. So these topics are, the word sticky comes to mind. When we start talking about this, I want you to pay attention as we're going to find if you notice any of this kind of stickiness that I mean. And that is, you might find a little resistance happening, or you might find at times, maybe you feel like, well, that's not really me. I don't do that so much. I know other people do, but maybe that's not me. Or I don't like that idea, or anything along those lines. And I just have to say, this is something all of us do. And that's even more reason why we need to be aware of the fact that it's happening, so that we can become better at paying attention to and discerning what it is we actually need right now. And so a couple of quick examples of how any group of people can essentially agree that something is true, but a lot of times that's done out of fear or even ignorance. And so we come up with what we would call a consensus reality. It's something we just all generally agree is the case. And it doesn't necessarily rely on facts or proofs or truth or anything like that. It's just something we all have come up with and agreed is the case. And so just a couple of examples from history. One is that for centuries or even millennia, people believed that the world was flat and that there were edges to it that you could fall off of. And when scientists, astronomers like Copernicus and Galileo started to say, well, hang on now, it actually appears that the Earth is a sphere, so it's not flat at all. And they were, driven out of the church, and they had all sorts of issues in their time, until more and more people started to find that, well, okay, this appears to be true, that the Earth is a sphere. Another one, Salem witch trials, is very commonplace for people to be suspicious of women, particularly single women, particularly women who were a little bit unconventional. And the easy solution was to label them a witch and put things back into order after they were thrown in a pond with a weight or burned. And all sorts of tragedies have happened as a result of this kind of fearful consensus thinking. Here's another one, is just, if you imagine people living in a community, we were talking about this today, about how people living in Boulder, Colorado, which is, I would even say, notorious for how liberal it is, it has evolved a kind of consensus thinking around everything that you can imagine, from spirituality and politics to, what's the best way to live as a human. Compare that to somewhere, maybe in a small town somewhere else in the country, that might swing more toward a conservative end of the spectrum. And you're going to find that what people believe is true and good and what makes for a right, upright life looks very different. And so really it's hard for us to say sometimes what is normal and how's that different from just the common things people accept. And one last quick thing I wanted to say is that there are a multitude of reasons why we operate this way, and it's how we're wired, it's our psychology. Some of you have heard us talk about the negativity bias before, which is our built-in danger trigger. It's the thing that helps keep us alive and looking for things that could harm us or endanger us. And unfortunately, that has grown from just a survival instinct to our social interactions and judging other people, being negative in general about things that we don't like. And then we have other things built into us that psychologists call the confirmation bias, where we essentially find examples out in the world of whatever we believe is true. So if we believe it, we'll start to confirm it by finding the evidence out there. So it's kind of like believing is seeing, if you want to think of it that way. And another example would be a false consensus bias, where I'm a reasonable person, and obviously as a reasonable person, I believe such and such a thing is true, and therefore anybody who's a reasonable, good, upright thinking person like me will agree with that statement, and anyone who doesn't, well, they can get lost. So it's that kind of thinking, and we have this tendency to also confuse knowing about something with the experience of it. And we do this all the time. I don't know if there's a psychology term for it, but I just call it the knowing bias. That by knowing of something, we think that we actually have the experience of it. It's something that just goes on in our brains. So I wanted to just set up the conversation like that, because whenever we feel like something is threatening or challenging this idea that we hold as normal, we can feel that we want to push back on it. And, like I said before, we can feel threatened or judged. And the last thing I want to say here, and then I'll hand it over to Masami, is from a learning standpoint. My background in part is educational psychology. And one of the big statements that lives in that world is that learning happens in a state of disequilibrium. Okay, I'll say that again. Learning happens in a state of disequilibrium. In other words, you have to be out of your comfort zone to take in new information meaningfully. So when we're always coming from a place of what is comfortable and feels good and is familiar, that is the opposite of the conditions that are required for us to learn new things. So when we're talking about this conversation today, I want you to just notice those little prickly moments, okay? In one of the training modalities that I have, sometimes that's referred to as, now I'm forgetting the word. It's a word like sticky. Scratchy, that's the word, scratchy. If you feel sticky or scratchy, now we're sounding like cartoon characters, but notice it when it comes up and just see if you can pay extra attention when it does. Okay, I'm gonna hand it over to Masami.
Well, the sticky or scratchy is when, I'm almost singing the, what's that?
That was
show?
Itchy and Scratchy.
Itchy and Scratchy is what I'm thinking. Show that I'm thinking maybe someday, one of these Monday calls sounds like Itchy and Scratchy shows. But anyway, the fact is, what we've done with the social media too is we've collected people, right? And then what they've done in terms of research is that if you start to lean towards one kind of a thinking, there's the huge algorithm that goes through it behind your screen and basically pumps out more of the same confirmation bias. So you're going to get the same news over and over and over. So sometimes, it's good to throw off your computer system and like research something that completely you don't even believe in. And so just throws off the computer system too. I do that all the time, just for the heck of it. And then YouTube channels and things don't just keep pumping in the same information just so that I can say, oh, this is really good. Yes, this is, I feel comfortable in this. It's like we're getting boiled to death. Like a frog is just getting boiled in the water and we don't even know it. That's kind of what's happening. We're not seeing that. We're just getting conditioned into believing the same thing. So we're not using the full capacity of our brains to say, okay, I'm going to look at it differently. I'm going to see it differently. How's this? Why am I believing this when there are others that don't believe this way? And it's staying curious that is the key to staying healthy, because curiosity actually brings up your level of neurotransmitters in your brain, especially dopamine. So if you want to get more dopamine back into your brain, then you've got to stay curious. So that's one thing that you want to take yourself through, feeling a little scratchy or a little bit, this doesn't feel comfortable. That's it. That's good. That's where you want to lean into. But I feel like a lot of the spiritual teachers have done disservice to this because we are teaching each other saying, you just have to feel comfortable with it. Does it sit well with it? Does it feel good? Well, I don't know. Sometimes maybe we need to lean towards things that will make you feel, ooh, that's a little uncomfortable, but can I remain interested in this? Can I remain curious? So, just something to think about with your own day-to-day also. And some of the common things that we hear in our clinical setting, and we'll start with this, like the big one is, like, as I'm getting older, I'm just getting older. That's what I hear all the time. I'm just getting older. And I don't even know what that means. And I will always try to stop the person from finishing that sentence because I don't want that to get reinforced in that person's system and into their cellular memory. So when you're saying things like, oh, this is how I've always been. I've always done it this way. That will never get you out of the rut of coming out of that pattern. So getting older, yes, we hear people say aches and pains and not being able to sleep, weakness in their muscles, indigestion, but those are just because they're common, doesn't mean they're normal, okay? And we've been going over some of the prescription medications that a lot of people take, and one of them is antacids or acid blockers, PPI blockers. Those are probably one of the most prescribed drugs in the United States and Western cultures. That's because it's so common to have. When you eat, you are supposed to feel bloated. You're supposed to feel distended. You're supposed to start to burp up. You're supposed to have a sense of kind of like queasiness, heaviness, can't digest. That's what we're taught. You think that's common, yes, but that does not mean those symptoms are normal. And that's where you want to put on the Sherlock Holmes hat and say, okay, if this is not normal, why am I having all these common symptoms? And you have to take yourself away from this common realm and start to walk up the stream and say, what's this? What are some of the things that's causing me to have these common symptoms? That's where you want to go. Chris, you have other common symptoms you want to share?
Yeah, I was just going to say, to your comment you just made about how we're taught this, if any of you are thinking, well, hang on a second, nobody taught me to think that way. Well, just take a look at any TV show or movies. I just saw something the other day. I had something on, I was folding laundry or something, and I noticed that there was this conversation that happened between two characters on a very recent TV series. So it's not like it was 20 years ago or anything. And one guy walks in, he's stressed out, and the other one says, Rolaids, and just throws him the pack of Rolaids. So if you're wondering how you're getting taught, it's through those kinds of encounters that are happening in movies and TV shows, and like Masami said, social media. And they form this sort of echo chamber in our brains that causes us to think that is in fact normal. So some of the other things that we often hear is this idea that, you know, people have an idea about what it is to be a good sleeper. So we hear this a lot. People will say, you know, say, oh, how do you sleep? How's your sleep quality? I'll say, oh, I'm a good sleeper. You know, I lie down as soon as my head hits the pillow, I'm basically as good as dead. It's like, good as dead. All right. Well, and then we have to break it down a little bit. And from our view, that's a sign that something is very out of balance in their body, specifically with their adrenal glands, because that's one of the best indicators of it, is if you can't even tolerate being awake for more than is absolutely necessary for your survival, and as soon as you are on your pillow, you fall asleep, that's a good sign that you're pretty depleted and exhausted. But a lot of people that believe that they are a normal sleeper are in fact not only doing that, but they're either waking up multiple times throughout the night because they can't stay asleep because of those energy disruptions that they're experiencing from the adrenal dysfunction, and or they're also using a sleep aid of some kind. They're taking, you know, some kind of a prescription or an over-the-counter pill to keep them asleep. And from a biological standpoint, even though a lot of people are doing it, it's not normal for your system to operate that way. That's not how it's built to work. So again, to Masami's point, when these kinds of things are happening, the challenge always is to stay curious long enough to see something a little bit different than the habitual way that you have learned to address this issue. Hope that makes sense. So we have to stay with it long enough for that curiosity to get somewhere.
Well, and then another one that I see a lot and I hear a lot is when I say, okay, how are you pooping? You know, what's your bowel movements like? And the person will say, oh, I poop just fine. Well, first of all, I need to know more than I poop just fine. I don't know what that means at all. And then they will start to say, well, you know, like I just go a little bit in the morning and then maybe I have another one and then I have another one. And so I asked the person, okay, do you feel like you could completely poop things out? Everything's gone, like you feel eliminated, things are gone. And the person will say, no, you know, it just kind of gets cut off in a midstream and then I have to just wait till I go later. Or that's not a normal poop, okay? When you go to the poop and then have your bowel movements in the morning, you should feel like, okay, there's a nice peristalsis happening. Okay, I can go now. And you don't sit at the toilet like my father used to do and read the entire Time magazine from cover to cover. Okay, that's not normal. But if you asked my father, do you poop? He would have said, oh yeah, I poop fine. But you know what? My dad will be on the toilet for like a next 3 hours, literally. And us kids are like shivering because we have to go pee. So my mom had to actually put another toilet in their bedroom closet so that us kids did not like struggle from not being able to go to the bathroom. That's not normal, okay? Or other ones are people say, oh, you know, I take the fiber pills. Oh, I just do the, you know, Metamucil, whatever, fibers. And they say, oh, so, you know, ever since I've been doing that, I go to the bathroom. I'm sorry, that means you're constipated. I'm sorry, that means your poop is not actually normal, okay? You don't have to take dry powder of fiber to go to the bathroom. If you can poop regularly, you don't have to do that. So that's actually a constipation or any kind of a hernia type of thing. Yes, it's common, but it's not normal to experience these things. So that's another thing. And then another one is that people say, oh, you know, sometimes I get kind of sore and tight and it's just maybe I'm getting older. And they'll say, so I just take the ibuprofen. Okay, I'm sorry. That is not normal either. It's common, yes. But when are we going to just stop and pause and say, putting something to suppress that some signals are coming up through my body is not normal. You need to be listening to, why are you in pain? When are you in pain? What can you do about that? You got to walk upstream, find out what's happening. And I've mentioned this many times to previous calls, but imagine a beautiful pond and there are fish and frogs swimming in there. And one day you go to your favorite pond and you find that all the fish and all the frogs are dead. Okay. Then you say to yourself, oh, well, that's not good. So you go to your nearby pet store, wherever store that is that you get your fish and frogs from, and you come back with buckets of them and you put them back into the pond. And then a couple of weeks later, you go visit again and they're all dead again. And you keep doing that maybe multiple times. But I hope at some point you'll go, wait a minute, why am I doing that? Maybe there's something that's poisoning this water. And then I might need to go walking up there to see what is happening at the source. And that's the difference between common, that is not normal, and then you must become your own investigative person, that you ask the deeper questions. Why is this happening? So this is where the quality of the questions really begin to matter, right? If you're just saying, well, it hurts, can you do something about it? But then, yeah, there are always going to be solutions. There will be more painkillers, more Band-Aids you can put on or take. But that's maybe not the right question. Why are these things happening to me when I eat this way, when I move this way, when I'm encountering this person? What can I do about that? That's where you want to go. So I will pause there. Chris, you have other common things you want to share?
Yeah. I mean, another one that comes up a lot is I want everyone to just imagine maybe you have a parallel example of something like this in your life. But a lot of people have been hearing about intermittent fasting in the past few years, and for some people, it's really exciting just to think about, oh, I can use it to lose weight, and I can, eat less. I can do all these things. It's going to be great. But what ends up happening is that a lot of people are using the intermittent fasting, probably without realizing it, to just reinforce the same metabolic patterns that they're already stuck in. And so what that looks like is, if you wake up in the morning and you have low energy and no appetite, you're probably already in a place. I mentioned adrenals before, so let's just follow from that example. You didn't sleep through the night well. You're not rested in the morning. Over time, this also compounds and affects your thyroid. And so your thyroid gland is probably under functioning if you have these symptoms. And so what ends up happening is a lot of people with this set of symptoms will catch on to the intermittent fasting, partially because when you have those symptoms, typically it's going to be harder for you to balance out the weight in your body. And it's very easy to start to accumulate weight. And so the thing is, it seems like it might be working because it's like, oh, I can intermittent fast. I'm already not hungry in the morning, so I'll just not eat breakfast. And so what I've come across, and Masami of course has too, is people who are trying to fix the wrong problem, okay? And by that I mean they won't eat from the time they get up till maybe 1 or 2 p.m. And then they'll restrict their eating to about 4 hours of time. And then they'll be so hungry at the end of that 4 hours that they just eat a gigantic last meal. And then they're stuffed when they finally go to bed. And then that just compounds the lack of sleep, compounds the exhaustion in the morning, no desire to eat. So they're actually not really intermittent fasting because they're just on a dysregulated blood sugar cycle. They're just compounding that. And so this is how that plays into this common versus normal. Is it's very commonplace right now for people to recommend that, to say, oh, you should try intermittent fasting because it's the greatest. It works so well. Well, first of all, you have to know how to use it appropriately, and you have to know if it's the right solution for your particular set of circumstances. So there's a lot to this in what we're talking about. I hope we're not coming across as too preachy here, but there's a
We are, Chris.
this is, I guess this is how we preach. Okay, so this is
That's
us
okay.
preaching. So
No, but
I take it back. I take it back.
Can we go back to the intermittent fasting a little bit more? Because
Yeah, can I just say one last thing on
Mhm.
this? It's just that it's what we're getting at with a lot of these examples we're using. If you really follow them upstream, like Masami's example, if you keep following these questions to their root, to their source, you find that they show you much bigger things than that one little symptom. Okay, I'll just leave it at that for now. Okay.
Well, so when it comes to intermittent fasting, and I probably talk to, almost every day with somebody about this, because somebody will inevitably say to me, I thought the intermittent fasting is so good for me. So that's why I'm just not eating breakfast. But then I come to find out, this is where I have to be the Sherlock Holmes, right? And I will say, so wait a minute, did you always eat breakfast? And then you just decided, well, I'm not going to do that. But in 99.9% of the time, the person will say, no, I never really liked to eat breakfast. I was never hungry. I just kind of lost the hunger for breakfast. So I figured it's easy for me not to eat. Okay. What happens, everyone, is that there are two kinds of metabolic rates that we go for, or a metabolic style. Okay. One is a fat burning body, and the other is a sugar burning body. So you can almost write a circle and go, fat burning body requires or uses fats and stored fats as the fuel for the body. Okay. And the other side is the sugar, the ones that uses the quick carbohydrates. So we're talking fruits, we're talking carbohydrates of like breads, pastas, and even just vegetables alone. Okay. And obvious things like cookies and sugars and, all the white stuff. So that's the sugar burning body. So the people that will come to me or to us and work with us and say, oh, I was never hungry in the breakfast time anyway. Okay, that's a red flag for us, because that means that person is already hypoglycemic. Okay. Hypoglycemia is going to start to take you on a roller coaster with the blood sugar inside. And eventually, if you don't take care of that, you're going to go into insulin resistance. Then insulin resistance can lead to metabolic syndrome. And the metabolic syndrome means we're going into diabetes. We're going into type 2 diabetes, or could be dementia, could be Alzheimer's, which are more kind of like a type 3 diabetes is what we're calling it, right? So let's say if you'd never wanted to eat breakfast, or you haven't been hungry for breakfast for a long time, and you say, oh, well, it's easy, I'm just not going to eat it. That just perpetuates your hypoglycemia. So it doesn't kick you into a fat burning body. I hope you're getting this. You're just going in circles inside the sugar burning body. That's it. That's all you're doing. Okay. And the fat burning body requires you to actually fuel yourself as you break the fast. That's breakfast. As you break the fast, you go towards eating things that will feed your brain, your heart, your muscles, all your requirements. That means you need to eat things that are fat and protein oriented, not more sugar. Okay. And we will have a conversation about fruits at some point. Okay. Nothing wrong with fruits. Okay, everyone. I'm not anti-fruit. I love fruits. But the amount of fruits that so many of us are consuming right now is a road to sugar burning body, a road to insulin resistance, and possibly diabetes. Because fruits will convert in your body as stored fat. I'm going to say that again. Fruits, fructose, will convert to fat cells. All right. And I'm not going to name anyone, but many of you know. Okay. This person has a giant influence in the world, and I am going to start speaking up because I work with way too many clients that have been injured by this thinking. This person, last week, I forced myself to listen to this person's podcast every once in a while so that I can stay connected. Okay. meaning I have to understand what this person is spewing out there in the world. This person was saying that you should drink anywhere from 16 ounces to 36 ounces of melon juice in the morning. Watermelon, honeydew, all melons are fabulous. First of all, melons are not in season right now, anywhere in the world, okay? North hemisphere, southern hemisphere, melons are not in season. So you're eating outside of your season, you're eating outside of your nature, okay? And to drink 36 ounces of melon juice, do you know how much melon you have to blend it? Okay, so I'm just going to stop there before I will blow up this screen. So
I was
I'm
going to
done.
say, if your fruit consumption requires either a truck or a Costco membership to sustain, you're probably on the high end of what you need. So maybe just use that as an indicator for a rule of thumb. I was going to say too, I put up.
I know, Chris, you've been trying to like stop me from derailing.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say too, because it's connected directly to these things. I put it in the chat, this idea of hangry. Okay, it's become such a commonplace thing. You hear it all over the place now. You know, people just assume that that's just a normal thing that happens to you when you get hungry. It's not. I mean, speaking of Costco, and I confess we have a Costco membership, and I was there, and
Oh, Chris, I love
yeah,
Costco.
but I wanted to say this though. I overheard there are a couple of women speaking to each other, and one of the people that was displaying the samples, since they don't give them anymore, and she asked, the sample person asked, what kind of snacks do you like, or what kind of energy bars do you like? And this other person said, oh, I don't really care, just as long as it keeps me full. And that was a real that just caught me. Just walking by when I heard it, but that idea of something, I need something to keep me full, because what would happen, God forbid, if I ever felt a little bit empty? What would happen? What would I mean, I might disappear. I mean, my life might end spontaneously. I've never let that happen before. What would that be like? So there's a real fear kind of thinking that's behind a lot of these habits that we normalize. And then we have the whole commercial aspect of it, where we're trained to expect to snack all the time, and that's just something that we should do because it's available and it's convenient.
Well, and think about the social media, and think about the fact that we always have to be connected. It's like we can't have a moment of emptiness, a moment of nothingness. And this morning I was talking to one of my clients, and I said, in Buddhism, the most prominent word that used, like if you look at Chinese characters, the ones that pop out the most is the Chinese character called mu. And mu means nothingness, emptiness. That is the most important thing that we get in touch with, is the empty spaces inside us, to create silence and stillness and a moment of pause. But the example that Chris just gave, it's like her life isn't just about, oh, I just need to fill it, and as long as I'm full. But that will probably reflect back out into how she interacts with different things in her life. This is why working with people's diets and people's nutritional decisions and how they interact with the food gives us so much information into that person's life. And this is why it's so fascinating to both of us to continue to work with clients. But yeah, sorry, Chris.
No, that's okay. This is probably a good point to just segue to the upcoming programs, because it's totally connected to this topic of how to recognize what your internal patterns are. And do you want to talk about the classes, the courses that you're starting?
Well, can you just mention what they are?
Yes.
That's just the one that we start today. I mean, not today, but this week.
Yeah. So, well, the first one is actually opening today. So for those of you that may have already signed up, it's called The Art of Embodied Boundary Practice. And so a lot of this is actually getting at some of these more invisible patterns that we don't really tend to look at in our lives, so that you can make that conscious contact with what's driving your behavior. I used to be a classroom teacher, and one of the things that I would tell my students is, if they asked me why they needed to learn something, these were 5th and 6th graders when I first started teaching. They would always say, why do we have to learn this? Why do we have to do this? And I just got in the habit of always answering the question. So what I eventually started telling them is, if you're not thinking for yourself, someone else is definitely thinking for you. Okay, so that's one thing. That's one reason why. So you have a little bit more knowledge to work from. And also, so you have a little more flexibility to operate in different ways. Like they would say, well, why do I have to learn how to do cursive handwriting? I'm never going to use cursive handwriting in my job. I'd say, well, okay, fine. But let's say you want to write a letter to the president. Are you going to write in your chicken scratch? And is that how you want to represent yourself? So the whole point is, when we learn more about what we can do, we have more access to what we can do. Okay, and so this boundaries class, Masami is going to be leading this, and it's going to be very much an exploration into how we not only hold the boundaries inside us. Some of you that did the 7Bs course, this is going in an even more of an in-depth look into it, but about keeping in what we need to hold inside while simultaneously maintaining our external boundaries as well, and keeping things out that are harmful to us. And that takes not only energy in the body and nutrition in the body, but also a kind of discernment that goes from a cellular level all the way up into our psychology and spirituality. So that's one. I'll let Masami talk about the other one.
Oh, we'll talk about the other one next week. It's about the weight resistance course, which will be really intimate kind of a setting. So if you've been struggling with the weight issues, I think it'll be a really good one to look at, because we're going to look into not just physiological, but what are you holding on to on a psychic level, emotional level, spiritual level, and look at saboteurs, different saboteurs. But, I wanted to kind of mention about the common and normal, couple more things. One, everyone, is that I'm sure all of you remember what was common was low fat, non-fat. That was common. But we all now hopefully know by now, hopefully all of you know, that was totally the wrong thing to be doing, right? That was not normal for human bodies that require protein and fats. This is why I always say to people, there's no such thing as, there's such thing as essential fatty acids, and there's such thing as essential amino acids. But after about 100 years of nutritional studies that the Western world has been doing, no one has ever commented that carbohydrates are essential. So there's something to think about. Carbohydrates, there's no word that says essential carbohydrates. That doesn't mean I don't eat vegetables. I eat lots of vegetables. Vegetables are carbohydrates. A lot of people don't know that. Okay. But we do need to know the essential fatty acids, essential amino acids. Those are so important. So if you're having blood sugar dysregulations, please start to eat your breakfast. Please stop skipping it. That's one. And the other things are like salt, right? Oh, if you have heart disease, you have heart conditions, you need to not eat salts. Well, that's been revamped. No, not revamped. What's the word, Chris? The salts we need salt. I mean, there's been wars being fought over salts over the human history. Salts were more expensive than gold, okay? Because we need salt. So removing salt, wow, we've done such a disastrous things to our bodies with that too. And other things are, I'm just going to mention it. I'm just going to go radical today, is testing. Okay. Blood testing, mammograms. Okay. So about a couple of years ago, I was so glad to see this British Medical Journal or something have done the studies. They decided that the mammogram every year for women were causing more fear and anxieties and causing their cortisol to shoot up and causing people to have even more of the issues if they had to go get a mammogram done every year. So now in England, in UK, they changed it to every 5 years. Okay. Thank God for that. So that's another one. Blood tests, don't get me started on that, because healthy people don't go get blood tested. So the range that you have been put into that says this is your normal range because it's common is not a normal healthy range, because healthy 20-year-olds are not going to go get their blood drawn. So who goes and gets the blood drawn? People that have issues. They're having symptoms. That's why they go get the blood checked. So that's the information. Those are the information that are getting collected. And we are creating a normal range out of people that the labs have collected their blood samples from. Okay. And, I can't even remember the last time I had my blood drawn. So my blood is not part of that normal range. So this is where you have to put on the different hat to learn about these things. And, things like BMIs, that's a complete kind of an old idea also, BMI scores, because there are plenty of skinny and diabetic people. 40% of type 2 diabetes people are actually skinny people, and their BMIs are totally fine, but they're going into blood sugar dysregulation. Or things like, last thing that, Chris and I were talking about today when we're talking about this is a couple more things, but cholesterol number. Okay. We've talked about this last time. Cholesterol number just keeps going down. We are trying to normalize low and lower cholesterol as normal. So we need to just look back and say, what's happening here? Who's changing the numbers on normal range of cholesterol? Okay. And the last thing Chris and I were talking about was like, he was in the school system for so long. He watched these kids getting put into like gifted classes, gifted, group based on their IQs or based on the test scores. But you know what? Their kids that are brilliant just don't score well on tests. So what are we doing with creating normalized kind of feelings by saying, well, these kids are gifted, but these are not? So we all need to just stop and think about, what are we seeing in the world that is so common that we've decided that's normal? It's just worth it for you to pause. But those pauses don't occur if you are constantly stuffing yourself with eat, snack, eat, snack, eat, snack model, okay? Or you just want to always feel full, then you don't stop, pause, and notice. So I just wanted to mention that.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted that point about the kids is a particularly important one because, just as an example, so many things are overlooked. The more we learn about trauma, for example, I mean, we're as a culture becoming more attuned to this, more aware of what all the impacts of trauma are. But that's where one area with kids that we see a lot more of is that oftentimes kids are ignored because they shut down, because they're in that side of the trauma reaction. And so the normal response is, well, they're not an academic type, or they're a slow learner, they're an underachiever. And so a lot of those kids will get diverted into remedial types of classes. I've heard many examples. Bessel van der Kolk, the trauma psychiatrist, he talks about several examples of this where kids are later on tested, like around the junior high level, and it turns out they have genius level IQs, whereas when they're in elementary school, they were put in remedial courses. And so, again, what we're talking about, just to sum this up in a sense and put it together, is this common versus normal, is we have to look underneath the surface of things a little bit more. So back to the idea of curiosity, what's driving it? If we're not getting results that we're thinking should be happening, why not? What are we not seeing? What's missing? What is there information missing? Is there experience missing? What do we need to do to go back and find out more? So I just wanted to say, before we're coming toward the end of the call here, I wanted to just say a couple of things. Mary had a question about the best breakfast for a low appetite. So the answer to this question, she asks if it's meat or eggs. Okay, this whole common versus normal. Another thing that really ties into this is this concept of bio-individuality. Okay, bio-individuality has to do with what you need that's unique to you, your body, your system right now. And so even compared to yourself right now to 2 or 3 or 4 hours or tomorrow could potentially look very different. And so we can't easily just make blanket statements. So what I would say is the best breakfast for you is going to vary depending on what your needs are. There are days where maybe it might be eggs. There might be days where eggs or the idea of eggs make you want to throw up. Okay. And so you have to pay attention to what is your body asking for. You might need to do just a simple protein shake kind of thing for a little while just to train your brain and your body to that rhythm of having food in the morning again. You might need to very gently step it up instead of saying, well, they said, eat a good breakfast, so I'm going to have a steak and eggs. Well, not necessarily. It's this idea, especially for the Americans in the audience, you may appreciate this more, but, we have this idea here that it's like the idea of money. If $1 is good, then $100 is 100 times as good. And it doesn't work like that with food and a lot of other things in our lives. More is not always better. And so, or supplements. So just, you have to really listen to your body. And this is ultimately the skill that underlies everything that Masami does, everything that I do. It's cultivating that deeper skill of listening. And there are so many ways that applies throughout our lives, not just to diet, not just to, our everyday things. I mean, it's everything. It's our relationships. It's how we approach life itself. So, yeah.
Let's I'm going to post this was a podcast that it just went live. So I put it in the chat for you. And for those of you that are going to be listening to it on YouTube, we'll post it there too. But it's like about an hour long episode that I just recorded. It was really fun and fascinating, and talking about using your own voice and what does that mean to speak up, and she's a vocal trainer too. So from that standpoint too, we talked about it, but we went into all kinds of fun places. So I recommend you to listen to it if you have time. And I wanted to actually end with this one question that came in to me a couple of weeks ago, and I have not had the chance to address it. And she emailed me again and said, please, could you talk about it? And it's not related to today's topic, but it's kind of interesting. So I will read it. She says, I have a strange question for you. I consider myself a very spiritual person, but my political views seem to be different from the norm. In other words, I'm a Trump supporter who loves 12-step meetings, The Secret, your classes, the law of attraction. Sometimes I feel out of place. And she says, I never bring up politics, but this has been on my mind. I feel different and alone. She said, I know you can relate. So any thoughts? Because this is after I talked about how, I grew up in Japan where I didn't look like anybody else, and that not belonging kind of thing that I shared in one of my courses. So I've been sitting with this question for a while. I wasn't sure if I wanted to even go down this road, to be honest. But, I think what I sense, and when people write to me, I pay close attention to the words they use. And different from the norm really kind of came out of the sentence that she said. And the fact is, it really doesn't matter as long as you feel comfortable within your own self and that you are able to hold your balance. It really doesn't matter what others think or what you think is normal. Okay. So I think that's the part that I would question this person that sent me this question and say, what do you mean by, norm? Like, what do you feel like what it should look like? And I would probably throw a question back at her and say, what do you consider to be, politically correct person who believes in the movies like The Secret and My Classes, and then believes in spirituality, and then I want to support Trump? Like, what is normal to her? I would like to know that. I think that's the part that I would like for you to dig a little deeper, instead of me telling you, well, you should feel this way or you shouldn't feel that way, because there's a lot of judgment towards yourself that I think it's eating away at you much more than other people judging you. And so I would love for you to just pause, create silence, and say, who is judging me at this point? Because you may come to find out that, you know what, maybe nobody's judging you, except that you have created a box that says this is where the spiritual people should land. Okay. So that's where I would go. And a couple more things I wrote down on my kind of thinking was that I feel like this type of question creates more duality, that you should be this way and that way. And you're splitting yourself into half. Like, I'm going to be spiritual, but then I'm going to support Trump. I think you could be both, and you could be a beautiful human being. I mean, that's it. You could be this beautifully caring person. So why don't you tap into that? And, one thing I was thinking about it was that people probably think I'm not an introvert, but I am. I'm an extreme introvert. If, I don't want to go to birthday parties. And I'll just tell you a story. A couple weeks ago, I got invited to a birthday party from this group of women. Okay. I don't want to go. So I just stayed with it. I didn't answer the evites. I looked at it multiple times and I was just like, oh, what should I do? I almost was going to click maybe, even though I didn't want to go. And I had Chris muscle test me. I know the answer, but I had to have Chris test me. And then I'm having a hard time. Like, I'm nervous inside. He's like, oh my gosh, Masami, I tested you 3 days in a row. Every single answer was no. You don't want to go to this birthday party. Okay. So why don't you just say no? And it took me another 2 more days to answer. I almost clicked on maybe I can make it. And I'm like, what am I doing? No, I don't want to be there. I don't feel comfortable in that kind of setting. So I said, no, I cannot make it. Hopefully, happy birthday. Hopefully everybody's doing well or something like that. But why I'm bringing this up is that you could be an introvert like I am and still be so passionate about what I do that I can't help it but to go out through the screen, through this kind of a format, and still express myself. You can do both. And so let's stop putting ourselves into these boxes. Stop doing that to yourself. Can you just embrace who you are, that I can be an introvert and at the same time so passionate that I want to go out and speak about it. And at the same time, I want to say no to a birthday party. Okay. It's okay to be all that, to have a range of who you are. So that's what I want to answer. That's how I would like to answer your question. To you look deeply into what are some of the labels that you're putting on yourself that is causing you to have tremendous weight on you for being who you are. So love who you are for all that you are. Okay. So that's what I have.
I want to close off with just repeating something that was said to me recently, and from one of my teachers, and it applies to all of us, and that is to be more of what you are. That's what we're here to do, is to be more of what you are. And so whatever that is going to vary by the time and the place and the circumstances. And so what we're encouraging all of you to do, including ourselves, is not to get caught in the norming behavior where we start to lose sight of things, and we get our blinders up, and we stop seeing what's out there for us to experience and reach toward in the world. So that's what this is ultimately about. That's the big reach, is to be more of what we are, and to just not be prisoners of the words and the terms and the language and all the ideas that get pushed on us from all directions. So
great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And we'll be here next week. And we'll be taking a little break to celebrate my birthdays in towards the end of this month. But we'll be here next week again. And we'll explore different things. I actually wanted to bring up the topic of allergies, seasonal allergies, because that's kind of a big one this time of the year for whether you're in the Northern Hemisphere or Southern Hemisphere. So we'll do that. And if you have, questions or topics that you want us to address, you can always go to Zenshin Institute Facebook page and you can comment on there, and I will look at that regularly. So, okay. Thank you, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
bye.